Can everyone hear me? Yes. Thank you.
All right, everybody, we good? All right. Can everybody hear me? If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Cool. All right. Welcome everyone to the District of Brown Deer School Board meeting. Today is Tuesday, June 28th, 2022. Verification of a public notice. The meeting was publicly noticed. Call to order. I call this meeting to order at 6:03 p.m. Verification of a quorum. We have all 7 board members in attendance. Approval of the agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Dr. Beadle, I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ashley. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Dr. Vito, I'll second.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peterson. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor with raised hand and or aye. Okay. All right. Motion carries unanimously 7-0. All right. And now we go on to our mission statement. All right. Together with our families and community, we will inspire students to be passionate learners, creative thinkers, and innovative leaders who enrich our world. All right. Let's go on to our now next. Before we get into the district communications, because tonight we do have public comments. Ladies and gentlemen that in the community, if you have a public comment, please go to the chat and put your name and your address and your comment in. Ms. Robinson will be monitoring the chat in order for you to be able to have your comment. Again, remember that it's not questions, but comments that you would like to be able to make. And the limit on that is for 2 minutes. So again, you have to come in, state your name, your Brown Deer address, and what your comment may be for the public comments. Okay. All right. So now let's go on to our next item is to our district communication and district administrators report. Dr. Kelsey Brown.
Good evening, everyone, and happy last meeting of the month and happy new year, happy new calendar year in July 1. So we start a new fiscal year in July 1. Just a few updates on my part. A reminder that we hired Mr. James Young as the middle school principal, and Dr. Garrison and I are working with him to onboard him in his new role here in the school district of Brown Deer. I would like to report our leadership retreat with Mr. Ted Nysky went very well 2 weeks ago. We collaborated as a team and employed additional strategies around leadership. And then we went to dinner as a team on that evening. We are continuing to plan for the upcoming school year regarding new teacher week, as well as welcome back week for our staff. We are also meeting with, or we had a meeting, Ms. Smyska, Mr. Klimick, myself, and Chief Nimmer, Officer Olick, and Lieutenant Crone regarding safety planning for 22-23 school year. Ms. Shimmons and I met with Dr. Lakeisha Russell as we are planning some socio-emotional learning, professional learning for our parents for the upcoming school year as we return to come back to school for the 22-23 school year. In addition to that, I also participated in the Ed Foundation meeting, and so there's some planning coming forward with that for the 22-23 school year. We are preparing ourselves to move our board meetings back to the ASC in August. So from a technological perspective, Kara Turner, Andy Hayes, Tom, and Eric are working on what that could look like so that we can broadcast with a sense of clarity. So hopefully we will be back in the ASC in August for our board meetings. And then finally, summer school is going very well. And just a reminder, we will not have summer school will not be in session the week of the 4th of July. And we will return the following Monday for our 3rd week of summer school. And so that's just a little bit of what has been happening in my area as we continue to plan for the 22-23 school year. And if there are any questions, I would be more than happy to answer.
All right, board members, any questions for Dr. Kelsey Brown? All right, hearing and seeing none. Thank you very much, Dr. Kelsey Brown. All right, all right. Now let's go on to, do we have anything also for under our district, other part of our district communications, Dr. Brown?
That's it.
Okay, all right, we're moving right along. Let's go on to area number 3, to public comments. I know that this actually came up pretty quick within our meeting, but any public comments as of yet, Ms. Robinson?
Not at this time.
All right, what we will do is we'll give that another minute. All right, I don't see as though that there's anything else that has popped up into our chat for anyone for public comment.
Oh, I think we're good to move on.
All right. Well, all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as always, our second meeting of board meeting of the month is usually the one is reserved for public comments. And in the future, if you have public comments, please do so. And that way we can answer, that way you can have any of your comments that you would like to be able to make. All right, let's go on to our next item, our consent agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Dr. Beadle, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 10th, 2022 special board meeting, the minutes of the May 24th, 2022 regular board meeting, and the schedule of voucher payments via check, ACH, and wire transfers in the amount of $816,903.11 in the general checking account and the food service account, including funds 10, 21, 27, 39, 47, 49, 50, 72, 80, the 2022-2023 district depositories, and the June 28, 2022 school safety drill as presented.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ashley. That was a mouthful. Thank you very much for that motion. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay. Was that Ms. Robinson? I heard somebody.
That was Ms. Walker.
Okay, how you doing? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Walker. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor with raise hand and or aye. All right, motion carries unanimously, 7-0. I don't know, something's going on this evening to where generally if someone speaks, their box lights up. That lets me know. But tonight, for some strange reason this evening, it's not happening. So my apologies for anybody that might have seconded or made a motion and I didn't see it or hear it. Thank you. All right, let's go on to our next item, item number 5.
Item number 5.
Okay, but
Dr.
discussion,
Buchanan.
consideration of strategic planning presentation, Mr. Horwick from Horwick and Associates,
Yes,
Dr. Kelsey Brown.
yes, Dr. Drew Howick is supposed to be with us tonight. I, however, do not see him in the room yet. So if you would like to proceed and move forward with 5B, I will email him and figure out what is going on. I did send him the link, so let me figure out what is going on, and hopefully we can revisit 5A. Is that okay?
That's not a problem. All right, let's go on to item 5B, facilities and grounds update. Ms. Smitska.
Good evening. I'm also having a little bit of bandwidth problems, so if anybody can't hear me, just let me know. So I have provided a pretty lengthy update over the past month of what my team and I have been working on. I don't want to provide quite as granular detail as this goes into, but I also think that it's beneficial for the board to know exactly what my team and I are working on. So moving forward, I'll be providing quite a bit more detail in my weekly reports. But for tonight, I just want to go through a few of the large items that we've been working on. When we lost Kurt back in January, there were a lot of overrides in our building automation system, and he was managing them. And so when he passed away, we were not sure why the overrides were in place in some of the cases. So I have been working with our new HVAC operations manager to go through all of those overrides and just to assess why they're in the system potentially, and then remove them if we can. So we're also working on putting a few processes and procedures in place just to help manage workflow with that particular group. So we've created some Google Sheets that track all of the issues that we're having with equipment. It just provides us a better history of the issues that we're seeing, and hopefully that'll give a better picture to us moving forward. The other big items that we have worked on over the past month are I began auditing classrooms in the middle school and plan to move over to the high school and then elementary to check for any repairs that are needed in those rooms, as well as just give a really clear list of tasks that each custodian needs to do in those spaces. We also have in this building, when the referendum occurred, we had quite a bit of new equipment installed in the kitchen. One of those items was a new walk-in cooler. Because of how hot it has been, well, not today, but a couple of weeks ago, we had quite a few hot days, and that cooler was not keeping up with the demand for cooling. We had Accurate Refrigeration come out, as well as Belter, who was our food service engineer on the project, and both of them agreed that the unit was on the undersized end of the spectrum. So at no cost to us, they are going to be replacing that with a much more robust system that will alleviate our issues with cooling in that unit. That unit, on a positive note, is not experiencing any issues with supply chain that we are seeing so frequently in a lot of the other trades. So we will definitely have that up and running by the time school starts. The final item that I want to talk about is something that Dr. Brown mentioned in her update as well, is that we did meet with the Brown Deer Police Department to go through ways that we can position ourselves to be the safest school district that we can be. And so with that, we did look at a number of tools that Officer Oleg brought to the table, including this really interesting way to map our buildings. So instead of room numbers, when we're communicating in a, God forbid, situation where we need police involvement, we can give a coordinate. So in quadrant A4, instead of classroom 414, which is not as universal as looking at a map and being able to see where A4 is on a grid system. So a lot of really good, positive things came out of that meeting. We are going to continue that meeting through the summer, including meeting with them next month, middle of July, to discuss any change side. And then we will be bringing that to the board for approval. We are also planning on doing a walkthrough with the members of the police force so that they can get acclimated with our school as well. So I know that there's quite a bit more in this report than what I discussed, but I just wanted to kind of give you a high level overview of some of the bigger tasks that I've been working on. Are there any questions that I can answer? Not just about what I talked about, but anything in my report from the board.
Board members, questions for Jody? Yes, Ms. Ashley.
I don't have a question. I just want to just say thank you for providing that information. I thought, and I read through your entire report, and I appreciated all of the information in terms of the things that you've been working on that you shared. So just thank you.
You're very welcome, Miss Ashley.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Jody. And as always, you and your team always do an excellent job, so thanks.
Dr. Beto, Mr. Houck is on with us if you want to go back to 5A.
Okay, all right, let's go back to 5A for Horwick and Associates.
Okay, all right, so I will tee this off. This is the third presentation we've had regarding the board selecting an organization or a company to help facilitate our strategic planning process. As we know, our strategic plan is scheduled to retire or end June 30th of 2023 next year. And so we are trying to prepare ourselves in advance to be prepared for what July 1, 2023 will look like with a new strategic plan for the school district of Brown Deer. And so with that being said, Mr. Drew Howick is our third presentation regarding the facilitation of this process. And Mr. Howick, if you would like to turn your camera on and join us at this time, you're up. And we will go ahead and share your, I think you have hosting rights, Mr. Howick, and then you can share your screen and present your material.
Great. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I have gotten to know Monica over the last couple of years through the new Superintendent's Academy. And as some of you know, I was intimately involved with your last strategic plan, Defining Our Destiny 2.0. And a quick show of hands, how many people on this call participated in that planning process? Okay. For those that are whose faces I can see, it looks like 2 or 3 of us. Like that's great. So I am here per Monica's invitation to overview a process for your consideration and for you to determine if this process and my approach is appropriate for you this time around. So I will bring up my screen. Host disabled participant screening sharing.
Courtney, I'm not able to give Drew hosting rights. I thought he had them already. Can you make him the co-host? Who will not
Be able to share now.
Yeah,
Okay.
that looks
Thank you.
reasonable. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Good. All right. So when Monica asked me if I would be interested in this, I said, highly likely. Let me take a look at the history of Brown Deer, since it had been 4 or 5 years since I worked with Deb Kerr and your board at that time in putting this together. So I looked through your plan, Defining Our Destiny, 211 through 816, as well as Destiny 2.0. and got a sense of where you've been, the processes you have used, and thinking about the approach that I would bring and what I would want to share with you. So I have a couple of observations, first on your planning process. One is that over the last 10 years, you have consistently involved many members of your community. And I would say in a very meaningful way. The 2011 plus plan brought together over 70 people to talk about the future of the district. Many stakeholders are involved. Your last one, 2.0, I don't know how many people were involved, at least 200. And this was a combination of the going to the people strategy that Deb Kerr used in having focus groups with a number of organizations and schools about the future of the district and what they wanted to see, as well as the bringing together of your community for that one day in May, where we had 80 some people that came together and focused on a handful of very specific questions. So you clearly have a commitment to community engagement in your process, which is what I do. That's my specialty in terms of the strategic planning process. Both plans acknowledged and reflected changing times in the community and in education. So in the 11 plan, coming off of a recession, a lot of tough economic times, the board was very keen on one campus, remarkable results from that. The 2018 plan, a lot of changes in the Brown Deer area, the students that enrolled, the families that were served. So clearly your plans, that's one of the reasons people do strategic plans frequently, is things change constantly. And your plans acknowledge those changes. Both identified many goals and action plans. And I will speak to this a little bit later in terms of the number of goals. And that's why I included as a document for this meeting, your 2.0 plan, where at the end of it, you can see the areas that were focused on and the number of goals and the action steps for each. And I would like to comment on that in a little bit. External events impacted both plans, some resulting in some goals not being achieved. This last 2-3 years is a classic example of how external events can really uproot and cause significant challenges to sticking to a plan, which of course is one of the reasons why plans are done frequently because of those changes. And this has been challenging for many districts that I've worked with, that plan almost went to the side and they were dealing with the very short-term types of urgent issues, but not as focused just because of resources and bandwidth on some of the more important longer-term types of things. And the other thing I will say is that I believe your plans are very comprehensive, very informative, and visually attractive. I don't know who your graphic designer is, but kudos to that individual or that team, because when you look at your plan compared to others, I mean, it looks like what it is, a thoughtful, comprehensive document to guide the district. So those were some of my initial observations as I looked at the plans that I was involved with and then the ones before. So I have some recommendations on your next plan. The first one and the foremost one is continue your commitment to meaningful community engagement. In fact, there was a statement in that last plan that really captured this whole concept of how it was integral to the updated strategic plan, because you made a concerted effort to reach out to a variety of stakeholders in a variety of ways, not just the community conversation, but the going to the people strategy, where you went out and talked to people face to face. I think that is going to be an important part of this planning process, because I suspect during the last 2 years, your administrative team has probably not spent a lot of time in meaningful engagement on long-term choices and priorities for the district. If they have, it would be an exception. again, back to my comment about a lot of short-term, urgent kind of issues that had to be dealt with, and some of those long-term priorities probably were not as integral. And so the go to the people or some variation of that, I think, is a real important part of this strategic planning process. And it would be part of my recommendations for how you do that. The second recommendation as I have is that you need to plan and prepare for potentially significant different future. To say the last 2.5 years have changed education is such an understatement. And I believe that your district and others that I'm working with right now are really putting a different lens to how they're looking at how education services will be delivered to students in the future. In your 2.0 plan, there was a comment in there saying that this plan will not chart a new course, but you'll stay the course building upon what you've learned, reviewed, etc. I would be surprised if your new plan would say that or something similar. I think you are in a new course. You need to chart a course with your community and all your professionals in education, and really challenge yourself to meet the changing needs of students and the ways that they learn in this environment. So I think your plan this year will likely be very different in terms of substance. Another recommendation is that I suggest you identify and commit to the most significant priorities. And less is more, I think, is applicable to here. If you look at the last two plans that you looked at, Defining Our Destiny on the left, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 major goals, or major pillars, I guess I would call them. And notice the number of goals and action plans in each. Very similar to 2.0. You had 3 areas of emphasis: inspired learners, innovative staff, supportive community. 4 goals, 17 action plans in the first, 4 and 23. You can see the math. In my opinion, this plan should have fewer goals and/or action plans. It's not that you will be less comprehensive. It is that you will be more focused. And given the amount of work that still needs to be done with what the COVID has done to our education, there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and the less is more, in my opinion, is an important part of your strategies going forward. The other recommendation, of course, is that your plan must guide your efforts and you must adjust when change occurs. I don't know how much adjustment you did to your strategic plan in the last couple of years, but if you're like most districts I work to, it wasn't a whole lot. Again, short-term focused, et cetera. And I believe that when you move forward with this plan, it is something that you keep front and center so that when items do occur, when change does happen, you're prepared. And we know things are going to happen. We just don't know what they are, although you may have some hunches, but I suspect all of the hunches will not be totally accurate and things will happen you cannot predict today. Well, which in my experience is why plans need to be reviewed consistently and updated, not because it's more work, because it keeps you focused. And I think this last couple of years has been just a classic poster child of why that is so different. So those are some of the things that I would recommend for you. Those are some of the things that I, as your external resource partner, would focus on as you put together this plan. Let me just share a couple of initial suggestions how we might work together, and then we'll open it up for comments and questions. The first thing that I would suggest we do is have the board and the administrative leaders step back and revisit your current vision, mission, values, and agree to your framework for your plan. Your framework in 2000, or your 2.0 is different, quite a bit different actually than the one prior to that. And I suspect your framework going forward for your plan is going to be different this time around as well. But I have found it's a good grounding exercise for the board and the administrative leaders to revisit that vision, which has changed a couple times over the past 10 years in your district. Mission's been consistent, values are relatively consistent, but it's time to just take a look and say, in light of what we know today, are those still in play? And then the framework for that, how many major pillars are you going to focus on? Do you want to continue the last three that you developed, or are we going to do it differently? So I have a process for which we can have a conversation and reach agreement on that. After that, the administrative team engages with key stakeholding groups to understand perspective and priorities. Again, something like the going to the people strategy last time. It doesn't have to be exactly that way, but I think getting some good, honest FaceTime with your key stakeholders to talk to them about what's happening in education, to hearing the answers to the questions. The last time around, I think there were some really good questions that were talked about, but we could visit those as well. And just for recap, last time when we did the going to the people, 3 questions were asked. Other than finances, what are the top 3 challenges you see facing the district in the next years? 2, if you could change one thing to our educational process or programs, what would that be? And 3, what skills do our students need to be leaders? I suspect those are good questions. There might be some better questions this time around. And whatever they are, we need to have a strategy to go to the people. My third recommendation for approach in terms of how I would work is we would create a community advisory team that partners to shape a community conversation and advocates with your community. We did this back in 2017 when the board made a decision to work with me in this process. The board identified well-respected leaders in all of your key stakeholding groups in your communities. We invited and they accepted the invitation to work, as we called it, a design team, advisory team, to structure that community conversation and advocate with the community. These are ambassadors to your process. The community expects board members and administrators to say, get involved, it's important, because that's your job. But when you have a well-respected group of leaders from all different stakeholding groups in those that you serve out there talking about the importance of this, it makes a difference. And that's why it's not unusual for districts to get 60, 70, 80, 100, 150 people together to talk about the future. The next piece is to bring the whole system together in a community conversation to identify the key priorities. For those of you who were involved in that day, I think it was May 17th, we had, I think, about a 5-6 hour conversation, tightly designed breakouts, plenaries. People got a chance to learn information, but more importantly, they got a chance to share their thoughts about the future of the Brown Deer School District and what they would like to see with that. And then take that voice, that community voice, and integrate it into the framework that the board and the administrative leaders have already agreed to. And then over this period of time to create that plan so that by the beginning of the 2023 school year, you have a comprehensive plan that represents all of those people. The last slide I will show you before we open up for discussion is just the guiding principles that I use for our community conversation, because that would be a real important part of this planning process. One, of course, is working hard to get the right people in the room. And that's where your advisory or design team really can be helpful. They know who the right people are in this community. You know who they are in terms of people who are, but these are folks that they know that would have a voice. The second is a global exploration before local action. People need to understand the big picture the broader perspective. So that think globally, act locally kind of thing, or the whole elephant, whatever metaphor, is a real important part of this. The third, of course, is really be clear about this is about the future. This is not talking about the past and what's it meant for us and how do we, it's all about the future and it's common ground, and we work in our process to find that common ground. And the other principles are all part and parcel of this. Clear roles, self-management, making sure every person who wishes to participate gets a chance to participate. And that's how the design of the conference is structured. And then everyone relate as peers. So that's a fire hose of Drew talking at 16 minutes and 23 seconds about how I would approach the situation based on my knowledge of your district, my skill set, and where you've been in the past. So I will pause, and here are a couple of questions that you might wish to respond to, and or any other questions that you may have.
Board members, questions for Mr. Howitt? Actually, I have a question for you. In 2017, when we were actually doing the strategic plan, and we actually had a big community meeting where we all met in the, were we in the element? No, we were in high school in the library where in the commons area where we did the big community meeting and stuff, and we broke out into different different groups and putting everything together. Would that still be a strategy that you would think that you would try to utilize?
I think that's very possible. And that's what I refer to as your community conversation. It was an opportunity to take all of the results of the going to the people discussions. If you remember those bubble charts that Deb Kerr put together, we put those out. And we use that data from those focus groups to then hone in on certain specific questions that we wanted people to weigh in on. And you're right, Todd, we had different breakout groups facilitated and recorders working on a series of questions. And people had a chance to go to a couple or three of those different breakout groups, all getting at a different end result. So that or something similar to it would, in my opinion, be considered. And that's where those principles come into play that guide the structure of that meeting.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
Ms. Macon.
Okay. I appreciate your expertise. Just wondering whether or not there's anything that you have that's research-based that can kind of support the direction that we go in, that talks about COVID, that talks about social emotional state of children now, even the social emotional state of parents now during the COVID. It just seems like right now, you know, in the past, parents, students, stakeholders have had a lot of input as to what they felt was important for the students. However, I think that now it's going to be more important than ever to have a research based strategy for dealing with education now.
Mhm.
So just that's just my input.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, first off, I totally agree with you. I do not believe, I'm certainly not an expert in a lot of that information, but what I have found is that administrators, professional educators, have a great deal of knowledge about this. And it's a matter of those people coming together, pooling their knowledge and making their recommendations. So Monica and her colleagues, 400 plus other superintendents around the states, they have put together a lot of information. Research ceases to provide a lot of data. Associations like WSB, WASDA, et cetera. There is a lot of great information evolving to better understand the current state of the situation and strategies for dealing with it. I've also found that when I've been doing community conversations 5 years ago, putting resources into mental health of students, staff, and even parents was not even on people's radar. And now every district, of course, that I work with, it is one of the top priorities. And the question then becomes, well, what is the best way for us to do that in our community, given the resources we have? And some communities are blessed enough to have very local, highly supportive, talented, professional people who can come into schools, or there's some kind of process for providing services. Others have to subcontract it out. Every community's got a different opportunity, I think. But yes, it has to be front and center, and it likely will be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other board members' questions? Drew, actually, I have 2 questions for you. Number one, how many sessions would you be, for your proposal, how many sessions would you be administering for us? That's question number 1. And then question number 2 would be is, what is the cost associated with your proposal?
Yeah. So I went into this conversation after talking with Monica, saying, you know, I need to present my general approach, and then for you to decide if that approach resonates and you think it is the right for the school district at this time. If you believe it is, then what I would recommend is meeting with Monica and whoever she feels is appropriate to chart out the specificity of this. So when we talk about going to the people, well, what might that look like now? And how might that work? Is there anything in process right now that we can build off of? Or is it a start from scratch kind of thing based on where we are? Same with your question earlier about the community conversation. What are some parameters about how we might want to structure that? Because there's a lot of ways to do that. And it was modified when I was in your district 5 years ago from what originally I had proposed to the board to what actually happened because of insights that people gave. So I can't answer your first question, and therefore I can't answer your second question. Not to say that they won't be answered if we partner together, but we have to have conversations as your partner, Monica and her team, about some of the specifics and assumptions on how to do this, where I'm involved, what role, and then I can provide a more specific cost estimate at this point.
Thank you. Other board members, questions for Drew? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much, sir. It was good seeing you again and really appreciate your presentation.
Great, my pleasure.
All right, everybody, let's move on to item 5C.
Good
Mr.
evening,
Clement.
everyone. Yes, good evening, everyone. We have several new hires to present to the board this evening. Erin O'Connell has been hired as the high school Spanish teacher and Natalie Robinson as the high school social studies teacher for the 22-23 school year.
All right, would someone like to make a motion?
Dr. Vito, I can make a motion. Do you want this motion with both of the new hires in one, or should I do them separately?
You can actually do both of them together because the dates are on there already.
That sounds perfect.
We can't really hear you, Ms. Peterson.
Oh, okay. So, let me see if I can.
It sounds like your microphone is not working.
Is that any better?
Have you tried your volume button?
I just turned my volume all the way up.
Okay. Well, I can hear you. I can hear you fine enough for this.
Okay. Can you hear me better if I talk a little louder?
Yes.
Okay. Corinthia, are you good?
I'm pretty good. I don't know if other people who aren't in the room can hear you, but we'll try to work through it.
Okay, sounds good. I'd like to make a motion to approve the hiring of Aaron O'Connell as a high school Spanish teacher for the 2022-23 academic school year. I'd also like to make a motion approving the hiring of Natalie Robinson as a high school social studies teacher for the 2022-23 school year.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Peterson. A motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Ashley, a motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor with the approval of hiring Aaron O'Connell and Natalie Robinson for the 2022-2023 school year would raise hand and/or aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries unanimously 7-0. We look forward to Aaron and Natalie coming on board and joining the Brown Deer family. All right, Mr. Clement, let's go on to item 5D.
We do also have a number of resignations this evening. First, we did have our deadline come and go for teachers signing their contracts on June 15th. And we did have 4 teachers who opted not to sign. They didn't officially resign, but legal counsel has recommended that the board treat them as resignations and to go through the process. So we have Kirsten Dukes as an elementary school special education teacher, Rebecca Olson as an elementary school coach and interventionist, Michelle Sims as the kindergarten teacher at the elementary school, and Maria Clements as the high school physical education and health teacher. And then we also have 2 additional resignations, Katie Bachman, who serves as our elementary school school psychologist, and Dara Atadari, the director of pupil services for the district.
All right. So with this, you could actually do the motion for all of those that were official effective June 15th. We can do all of those together. All right. All right. So who would like to make a motion?
Dr. Vito, I will make a motion to approve the resignation of Kirsten Dukes as an elementary school SPED teacher effective June 15th, 2022. And a motion to approve the resignation of Rebecca Olson as an elementary school coach interventionalist effective June 15th, 2022. A motion to approve the resignation of Michelle Sims as an elementary school 5K teacher effective June 15th, 2022. And a motion to approve the resignation of Maria Clements as a high school physical education teacher effective June 15th, 2022.
All right, motion has been made on those 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, those 4 resignations. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Dorothea.
All right, Dorothea. Okay. All right.
Oh, you said, oh, okay, Dorothea.
I said Dorothea because you lit up.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
Okay. All right. All right. Ms. Macon has seconded. Any discussion?
So I do have a question. So Mr. Clement, you said that they did not officially resign. So then what happens if they end up deciding that they want to stay? Do they have to be rehired?
They would have to be rehired. All of them, we have had communication with all of them. We provided email, either through email or telephone calls to reach out to them. In fairness, I do know, for example, Ms. Olson has accepted a position in another district, so I know that's the situation there. Another one is leaving education, I believe, altogether. A couple others we may not have heard from, but we have provided both email, phone, and then we did send out a letter last week after the deadline, basically giving them until last Friday for reconsideration if there was anything. And again, no contact. So at this point, we're moving forward by posting for those positions. So if they did want to, they'd have to reapply at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Peterson?
Yes, I was just wondering, Kevin, can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Great,
much better.
great. I was just wondering about Dara Antandari and her effective date of July 15th. she's moving into the new fiscal year. Was that date accurate?
The date is accurate. That is based on her, I mean, she's providing several weeks' notice based on her date of resignation.
So she has signed a new contract and then her date of service is ending after the signing of the new contract. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, yeah, she's under this. This is the second year of her contract.
Right.
So she's going into the second year, but is resigning effective that date. I'm not familiar with what her other employment situation is and when she begins, but again, that was her resignation and providing us the, her final date, which is
Okay.
July 15th.
All right, thank you.
All right. All right. No further questions? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor with raised hand and/or aye? Aye. All right. Motion carries unanimously 7-0 for the resignation of Kristen, Rebecca, Michelle, and Maria. All right. Now let's go on to Katie Bachman.
I'll make a motion to approve the resignation of Katie Bachman as an elementary school psychologist effective June 30th, 2022.
Motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Macon. Motion has been made second. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor with raised hand and/or aye? All right. Motion carries unanimously 7-0 on Ms. Bachman. All right. And last, Ms. Atandari.
I will make a motion to approve the resignation of Dara Antandare as the Director of Pupil Services effective July 15th, 2022.
All right. Motion has been made. Do we have a second? All right, Ms. Macon, thank you very much. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion before we go to vote? All right, hearing and seeing, all in favor with raised hand and/or aye? Aye. All right, motion carries unanimously 7-0. We wish Kristen, Rebecca, Michelle, Maria, Katie, and Dara much success on their future endeavors. And as we always say, once a Falcon, always a Falcon. Good luck. And if all possible, hopefully we can always have you come back to the district. All right.
Dr.
Let's move
Vito,
on. Yes.
if I may, I would also like to thank Kirsten, Rebecca, Michelle, Maria, Katie, and Dara for their commitment and dedication to the school district of Brown Deer. I really would want to highlight Ms. Antandari. So I'm pleased, and she gave me permission to do this. And I thought she would be on with us this evening, but I'm pleased to announce that she has received a promotion to serve as Deputy Chief of Special Education in the Racine Unified School District. So her resignation, of course, is approved tonight, and then she'll go on to sign her contract with Racine. And I just want to say thank you to Dara for her commitment and dedication. The leadership, Dara, I know you're not on, but you can go back and look at the recording. You have provided with servicing students with disabilities, English language learners, gifted and talented students, our Village Academy. She supported Rotary, the Black Student Union, nursing services, our parent engagement liaison, social emotional learning team, as well as served as part of the safety team is commendable. That is some major heavy lifting in one person's department. And so she carried it very well. Dara, we want you to know that we're happy for you. And we look forward to observing you from afar as you take Racine to the next level. And so we wish you all the best and congratulations on your promotion. And we wish everyone the best as they transition to their new endeavors. So thank you all so much. You all are greatly appreciated.
Wasn't there a program that Dara started as well? A program for the African-American students?
That was the Black Student Union. Yes.
Yes, cool.
Yes. And I probably missed something under her leadership. So, but I just wanted to highlight and share with everyone what happens in the People Services Department on a daily basis. So thanks to everyone. You all are greatly appreciated.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Beadle. Thank you.
All right, let's go on to item F, budget revisions. Mr. Clemick.
Actually, it should be 5E, should be the next one. This is the 21-22 just budget update.
Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. Yep, 5E, I'm sorry, budget update.
Oh, no problem. So as part of this, we did just post the May treasurer's report that you can see in front of you, just kind of reviewing where we are with our revenues and expenses thus far. I have gone through a process to try to project out the end of the school year. Now, since this has been published, we obviously, we're right at the end of the fiscal year on Thursday. So we are finishing the final payroll for the year, making sure the final bills are being paid, but there's always a few things that kind of bleed into after July that we'll go back and post date. But right now, I would say that the conversations we've had for several months now have been that the budget is tracking positively. Revenues are exceeding budgets. Now, the part about revenue, which will have some variability, and it will be a final decision we make as to how much we decide to claim from all the federal programs. So we already talked about the fact that my plan was to not claim any money out of ESSER 3 and save that for future years. So that's one reason why I am projecting that revenue will end up a little bit under what is budgeted, just to help save some of that money. But we are expecting all of the other major pieces, the equalization aid, property taxes, all of that to come in either at or above projection. From an expense side, we continue to see significant savings on the payroll areas, mostly due to it's the one side positive of some of the vacancies we've had throughout the year, that we did have periods of time where we had positions that we didn't have staff in place, or we had transitions from potentially higher paid staff to a lower paid staff as people left and were replaced. So we will see significant savings there. I am expecting some of the other lines, departmental budgets, utilities, things like that, to be a little bit above. So as we kind of finalize this, and like I said, I'm expecting the revenues to be somewhere under 25 million and the expenses to be a little bit above 24 million. So somewhere in between, as we finalize it out, we should have a surplus that we'll be discussing in July. So the question will then be, how do we address it? What do we do with it? And that'll be a conversation that I'll have more information for you at the next July board meeting, the workshop, and then the final meeting at the end of July will be a final decision we'll have to make regarding if we do a transfer to Fund 46, which again is that capital improvement fund, and that has to be done by the end of July. Otherwise, other money would be left in fund balance. So again, it's still very positive so far. Nothing else is standing out as we've been focusing on all the individual lines. So I don't know if there's any other questions regarding this current fiscal year.
Board members, questions for Mr. Clemming in relationship to the financials? All right, thank you, Kevin. Let's go on to our next item, 5F.
We're not going to do a budget revision tonight. After reviewing kind of some details with some of my colleagues, I don't know that it's necessary. So I'm actually going to suggest that we can skip that agenda item this evening, and we'll just go with the budget as approved in October.
All right, sounds good. All right, does board members have any questions in relationship to that? All right, thank you very much. All right, let's go on to item number G. Oh, preliminary budget.
Yep, I'm going to share my screen. Hope you can see it. Everybody can see the preliminary budget right now, the cover sheet. Okay. All right, so this is now I know the clock is on me. I know Dr. Garrison is standing behind me ready to tap me on the shoulder if I take too long. So we'll go through the budget. I have presented to the board. Again, this is the preliminary budget, which is the first phase of budgeting for the school district. This will be, it's a very rough budget. We have to have something in place by July 1st, but we don't have a lot of data. So we'll be working through this over the summer. I will present you with a revised budget in August that we will have prepared for publication for the annual meeting. And then we'll make additional changes between then and October as our final student counts and financial information is decided. So I'll go through this relatively quickly. If at any point in time you have a question, any board members, please let me know. I'll happily stop. Feel free to interrupt. Just wanted to mention a couple of things, again, that's very important about the budget and the budget process. Again, mentioning that this budget is very, very preliminary. Fiscal year starts on Friday and a lot of the information isn't available yet. And again, kind of the the preceding conversation about how fiscal year 22 ends up will dictate a little bit of how what we do with fiscal year 23. So those final decisions will help kind of inform what we have available for next year. No new spendable money, again, has been provided by the state in the budget. So we are dealing with $0 in the revenue limit, $0 in per pupil aid. And the legislature has been clear that their expectation is to use ESSER 3 to fill budget holes, which is what we will be doing to some extent. And there's other funding that we had this year that will not be available next year. So that is part of the reason why I'm recommending a slightly lower budget than last year. We are trying to find ways to be creative with revenue. So we are shifting some of our expenses to other revenue sources. As one example, our after-school programming, some of our after-school programming, which was funded by ESSER this year. We now have that CLC grant that we talked about last week or last meeting. That'll provide us with $130,000 for the elementary school after-school program. And this was an ESSER expense. So that will be something in addition to what we have. And then we are working on things like shifting utility costs for food service into Fund 50, which we have that excessive fund balance instead of having it come out of our operations budget. Just kind of a reminder that there's a lot of other outside pressures from that we're experiencing with inflation and other job market pressures. And that's going to keep our staffing costs very fluid over the next several months. So we did, the board has still proposed a 3.5% salary increase for all of our staff, and that's going to cost us about $500,000 overall. And as staffing positions become filled, we put in the actual amounts of salaries and benefits. And so we start to see those get more accurate as we go along. We do need to prepare for what you're going to hear over and over again from school districts is what they're calling the fiscal cliff, because when the ESSER money goes away, the question is, what has the state provided us? And, you know, as of now, we have no additional money that we know of coming forward. And obviously the budget for 23-25 is probably going to be impacted by the upcoming gubernatorial election this fall. So that's one other reason why we're looking at trying to be proactive and keeping our budgeted levels below what we had in fiscal year 2022. But on a positive note for our local community and our taxpayers, because of the changes, the additional money in state aid and the way the village valuation has been going, and the fact that we've increased our shared costs through things like defeasing debt, property taxes will go down again for the district. And so this will be another opportunity this fall to present a tax levy that includes additional defeasement potentially with still lowering the levy. So that's a conversation we'll have. Certainly the two pieces, well, I'll talk about that in a minute when we get to the revenue limit. So I wanted to bring up one other thing. I'm going to switch tabs here for just a second. This is an important piece just to kind of remind people of where we're at right now, in that over the last 10 years, the state has provided a variance of new revenue on a yearly basis, either through additional revenue through the revenue limit or through the per pupil categorical aid. And you can see the numbers have varied. In the last 2 years with this most recent budget, they provided no additional money. Well, that increase over those 10 years is just about $1,200. And that's a 10.9% increase from 2013-14. Meanwhile, CPI has increased to 20.5% over that time. So you can see now so even though they have provided additional funding, the money goes less far because the costs all around us have increased. So this is an important message to remind our legislators during this election cycle, and as they start to develop that next budget, is that they're behind. It's hard for us to even keep up with the cost of inflation when they provide money in such a sporadic way, and it just simply isn't enough to be able to keep up with those basic costs. So I just wanted to share that with you, just kind of as a reminder of why we are in this condition to some extent from a budgetary standpoint.
Hey, Kev, I had a question for you.
Absolutely.
Also within that dollar amount, what does that say about the additional cost of special education? And within that dollar amount as well too.
The state has increased over time their funding towards special education, but there was a point where it was 2/3 funded basically. And so I think next year it's projected to be about 31% of the cost. So it's improving. It was as low as 22%, say 5 years ago. So that's one place where the state has tried to contribute some money, but that isn't always spendable money because it's helping offset our local costs to some extent. It does provide more money to spend in Fund 10 if you have less to spend in special education. But again, it's not anywhere near the actual cost of providing those services to our students. So this still requires a significant local investment. All right. So I'll jump through a little bit here. I mentioned some budgeting challenges, some of the same things that we talked about in the executive summary. The executive summary is really a way for you to kind of, in a nutshell, kind of talk about what we're experiencing in the budget. So this is a little more detail for those who want to get into that piece. Just reminding you of the timeline. Again, the fiscal year begins on Friday, so we'll be approving this tonight to get us going through that process. We will have the annual meeting on September 29th, and at that point, we'll have a new budget presented. That's one that you'll have to agree to in August, or we'll have to approve in August, so we have time to publish it in advance of the annual meeting. And then after the third Friday count, we'll have additional information, and the final, what's known as the original budget will be presented and approved by the board on October 25th. And then just a reminder that in school districts across the state, we use fund accounting. So I'm going to go through each fund that we use here in the district. Each one has a special purpose, and revenue and expenses, or revenue comes from different sources. So we'll just go through those again, some of them relatively quickly that aren't as involved in our overall budget, but these are ones that we have to report and present from the state of Wisconsin. Quick reminder on our student count projection. Again, we had that huge increase last year of over 150 students. Not sure we're going to repeat that again, so we wanted to be cautious in our projections. So we are using the cohort survival method. So it basically kind of translates from one year to the next how many students they expect to have. One of the things that you will notice, I will note that in third grade we are anticipating 82 students. So that is one area where we have decided to reduce sections. So we have 5 sections of every grade level, but with 82 students, we can go down to 4 sections in third grade. So that'll be 20 and a half students per teacher. So that will still be well within our limits. And so that's one of the ways that we're going to help offset some of the additional costs that we are looking at. So with those calculations with our head count, at 1662 and adding in open enrollment, summer school, and some other things, we're projecting our overall FTE for next year to be 1,739. So another small increase. And the important thing to remember for funding is that DPI uses a 3-year average. So we still have this very low year of 2020, 2021, which was when we were coming back from the pandemic, coming into our hybrid learning. We did see a loss of students. Families went to virtual options, they went to homeschooling, and they all seemed to come back last year. So we are looking at, again, that number is impacting us a little bit. So we're not going to see a huge increase this year, but next year, when that number falls off, assuming everything else stays relatively even, we will see an increase in our revenue limit for the 23-24 school year. So our average does go up about 30 students to 1,694. I have a brief conversation about open enrollment here, where we this year we did not add additional seats that we had done in the past. So we are seeing a drop in revenue in that area on the revenue side, and we'll budget the same amount as an expense side for open enrollment out, because we do see that to be relatively consistent over the years. So we are seeing a net difference between open enrollment in and out of about $1.3 million to the negative. So we have to plan for that as an expense. And then just a projection, this is our open enrollment in based on where they were last year. So we had a few students graduate out. So we're looking to drop down to about 65 students with no additional spots. And I'm planning for 228 students again on the open enroll outside. We don't project by grade level because that will vary, but we'll get those numbers once the students are actually selected and register that they are going to another district.
Hold on once, Kevin. Just a quick thing or whatever. This may be a Monica question. I mean, a Dr. Kelsey Brown question as well. These 228 students that are open enrolling out, have we been in any type of communication with them to see if they would be willing to roll back into the district rather than roll back out?
No, we have not at this moment, but we can work with Ms. Krieger and Ms. Stewart to figure out what that could look like, send some communication to those families for sure.
All right, because Kevin, you said there's approximately about 1.3 million.
That is correct. That's the difference.
Yeah, that 1.3 million would go a long way in helping us with our current budget situation. So I guess my recommendation would be is to let's have some conversations with those families and let them know the great things that we're doing, and hopefully give us an opportunity to educate their students. Ms. Robinson.
I have a question as well, Kevin. Do we have any sense of how many students we may be getting from the new apartment development?
We didn't have any last year. Now the new one just opened up. So we'll be watching that as new registration for 22-23 starts on Friday as well. So we'll start to have families re-registering. So we'll keep an eye out for that. But that didn't impact us last year to any extent. So
Yeah, I know.
Keep it
I
up.
know that. I think I saw something that all of the larger units are already rented out. So I'm assuming that some of those folks probably have kids. So
could be, yeah. Well, we know the addresses, so we'll watch as the registrations come through. So I'll say probably by the end of July, maybe I'll take a peek and we'll see if any of those addresses hit, just to see if we are seeing an impact from those
Okay.
areas.
All right, thank you.
And of course, if our student count goes up, that would provide us additional revenue next year, and we would adjust our projections accordingly. So, but I think at this point, being unsure, we're just trying to be as safe as we can. So, so again, using those numbers, looking at our projection of our revenue limit, we are anticipating a small increase, again, based on the numbers. We did also receive a $300,000 or so exemption because of open enrollment students that open enrolled out, but we weren't able to count in October. That's a situation where either districts were late in reporting or students just open enrolled out using the alternative window. So the DPI does give you the opportunity to recoup some of those costs. So, but that is a one-time exemption that goes away the following year. So we are looking at about $21.6 million as a total revenue limit. And you can see the chart showing you kind of how that compares to previous years, as well as comparing it with the student FTE count. And again, the 22-23 is the projection at this point. And then a reminder that revenue limit is what we use to calculate our tax levy based on the combination of tax levy and equalization aid. Right now, we are projecting equalization aid to be about $12.7 million. That's a huge increase of 10%. I'm actually thinking that's going to be even higher when all is said and done, because this doesn't necessarily account for the defeasance we did. Again, that's a situation where we've increased our shared costs. And so that's part of the calculation with the equalization aid. And then as they start to finalize what property values have been around the state, whether Brown Deer has grown as fast as some of our neighbors. Again, I'm pretty confident we'll see that number go up. When you take all of the aids together and add them up, you then subtract it from the revenue limit with exemptions, and that gives you your tax levy. So right now we're anticipating a tax levy of $7.7 million, which is about a 9% drop. So again, that would allow us to potentially take some of that money and tack it into a Fund 39 over levy for next year. But again, that will have a bigger conversation closer to the fall once we have better numbers. But the story is that the tax levy will go down next year again. And then again, that chart shows you the tax levy in general, but you also can look at the size of the bars and you see how state aid, which was once the smaller portion of it back in 2016-17, now state aid, I'm sorry, I take that back. The property tax levy was the larger portion. State aid was smaller back in 2016-17, and now that's flipped, where the state aid is the larger portion and the property tax levy is considerably smaller. So then now we'll quickly run through the funds at this point, what we have, and some of them will take a little bit more time than others, but first we'll start with Fund 10, which is our general operations budget. This is the one that most of our work is funded through. Again, looking at the revenue side, I'm budgeting slightly under where we were last year, about 1% or a little less than 1%. And what the key here will be is how much money we decide to use of ESSER funding. So as other money becomes available, either through increase in equalization aid or something like that, we may be able to adjust some of those things. We'll also be discussing how much other aid we decide to capitalize on, whether it's title funding, things like that. So my goal is to try to prevent a huge drop off in ESSER funding, because then more likely than not, unless the state comes in to provide additional funding, we would have to make some significant cuts in 23-24. So I'm trying to have some stability in our projections so that whatever we do next year, we can also do the following year and keep things relatively consistent until the state catches up and provides us the funding to backfill. So a few notes on the revenue side, as I mentioned, Again, the property tax and equalization aid, they're at current projected levels. The aid estimate will be released on Friday, and then we'll have the final certification in October. And again, those two are inversely created. So as that are inversely related, as the property tax increase, or sorry, as the aid increases, the property tax levy will continue to decrease. It does not provide more spending authority, but it does provide that shift. We do have student fees returning next year, so we've tried to do a small budget for that, conservative at this point. Still uncertain on facility rental revenue. Just based on the pandemic, we're not seeing the number of events we have in the past. Open enrollment, we talked about the revenue has decreased as we indicated because of the not opening up any additional seats. Categorical aid remains at that set amount of $742 per pupil. We are planning on expensing the full amount of ESSER II this year, in this current fiscal year. So then that will eliminate any ESSER III dollars for this year, but then the goal would be to figure out how to split that ESSER $3 value, which is a little over $1.9 million over the next 2 years. And then just a reminder that some of those additional revenues, like the governor's COVID relief and the emergency connectivity funding, those are no longer available. And those were about $400,000 or so, or $350,000 between the two of those. On the expense side then, you are seeing employee salaries is obviously the major portion of our expense. Health insurance is up a little bit. Oh, I should mention with employee salaries, obviously that is based on our 3.5% increase. You don't see it as a flat 3.5% because of the shift in some of the costs of people as they come in and out. We do adjust for their salary changes. So some of that is absorbed just through that, but there is additional costs there. Health insurance is up slightly, not because of cost, or not because of the premium increase, but right now because of the uncertainty with some of the open positions, we have to budget for family insurance. So I have to be prepared for the highest potential cost, but some of the people we hire will probably be on single or may not elect to take insurance at all. So that number will drop. Other benefits are in there as well. Just other things to note, we are increasing utilities a little bit in Fund 10, but I've applied some additional costs in the Fund 50. Pupil transportation, this is just the Fund 10 version of that. That is seeing a little bit of a decrease because I'm going to try to go to seven routes next year. Based on staffing that we've had and the issues, I just don't feel confident that trying to squeeze 8 routes out of a bus company right now will help. Obviously, if enrollment increases significantly, we would have to look at that, but I'm going to try to go to 7 for the foreseeable future until staffing becomes less of an issue. Slight increase in open enrollment costs. That's just a shift in the amount of money that they're providing for each student, but we're keeping the overall number the same. And then just going through, we do have all the curriculum pieces that you've asked for and have approved. Those are all included in the budget. A smaller investment in technology because we invested so much last year. We're buying less technology this year. And then we also are projecting a much smaller transfer to Fund 27. Because we think our Fund 27 costs will be more reflective of actuals and then the budget we presented last year. And again, this number may change based on what happens again as we close out the 21-22 school year as well. Other brief notes on expenditures. We are making a few FTE changes. We did reduce the 1 FTE at the elementary school, like I mentioned, with 3rd grade. We did add the Village Academy middle school position, and then we added the 2.25 FTE at the high school from art, business, and Spanish. Those are all positions that you approved. Full step increase on the salary grid for the teaching staff as part of the compensation increase, a $900 in cell value, a 3.5 increase for the administrative, custodial, and support staff. And right now we have a 0% increase for health and dental insurance premiums, but of course, selections will vary that a little bit. Building budgets are remaining flat. We talked about the pupil transportation piece, how we're going to try to go for a little bit of a reduction. Utilities, working through that as well. We do know that we have increased costs in athletic budgets because officials' pay has been increased on a conference and basically on a statewide basis to help increase the ability of having officials for events. We talked about open enrollment. The voucher expense is projected as flat right now, and this is just to help everyone remember that this is a wash expense basically. So whatever number the state tells us we're going to have to pay in a voucher expense, we will tack that onto the tax levy, and so it will end up being a zero-sum gain. But obviously, the more students that go into the voucher program, it increases the tax levy or increases where we have to put the tax levy to support that. We talked about insurance lines we approved last time. They're up about 10%. I have put in at this point one security staff member included in the personal services line. That would be a contracted person. Again, as the budget solidifies, we can maybe look at other additional things, but there are positions that have also been requested that we haven't yet included. But again, this is still preliminary, and as we look for additional sources of revenue and additional savings, we'll maybe be able to do some of those things again. And then that transfer again, as I mentioned. So right now with the budget as presented, I have about a $51,000 surplus. I want to provide, have a little bit of pad in case there are other unexpected expenses go up over the course of the year. And again, as that staffing, open positions get completed as we go. So again, we're planning on using about $1 million of ESSER 3 funding. So the more funding that we decide to use next year will force additional cuts the following year. If we can keep it relatively balanced, we should be in much better shape. And again, all of these projections will change as more information becomes available throughout the summer. So that's a lot on Fund 10, but that is the majority of where our money comes in and where it goes. So is there any specific questions about Fund 10 at this point?
Board members, questions for Kevin?
I just want to say thank you for your thoroughness.
No problem. Then some of these will go through relatively quickly. Fund 21 is known as Special Revenue Trust. This is where in addition to donations, it's also where all of our student activity funds are. I don't have good budgets for this yet, but that's one of those situations where the money comes in, the money goes out. Student groups raise money, or the Ed Foundation donates money, the money goes out for specific expenses. So it's usually pretty much a wash. We'll continue to work on a budget for that as the year goes on. Nothing else really about that one. Special education, similar to Fund 10, this is where all of the special education funding comes through. The main source of revenue for this is the transfer from Fund 10, which we're dropping from what we budgeted this year, because I don't think the number that we have budgeted this year will be reality of what we do. So we'll make another adjustment to this budget as we finish up this year and know what that will look like. But again, the same things when you're talking about compensation for staff, transportation, all as part of that. And we don't have information, as example, we don't have our IDA grant budget yet. We don't know how much money we'll have. And the other key too, if you remember last year when I had just started, I think I over-claimed a little bit. And so we were a little nervous about a maintenance of effort issue. So I'm being more cautious this year and waiting a little more to the last minute, just to kind of make sure that we have adequate local expenditures in there. So that's part of this equation where how much do we claim, how much additional revenue do we take in versus how much comes in from the local funds. So that's it for Fund 27. Fund 38, non-referendum debt service. There is nothing in Fund 38 because we have no non-referendum debt. We paid off that 2 years ago. Fund 39, our referendum debt. This year we over levied by $600,000 and we made a prepayment of $920,000, which was great. We may be in a situation to do that again. So we'll again talk about that as we get closer into the fall before we get to the levy piece. And I do update you with the total indebtedness of the district. We have 2 loans that will be coming off the books next year, and then we'll be down to the final 6, which are basically tied to the 2012 and 2018 referendums for the most part. And then Fund 46, our long-term capital improvement trust. This is the money that when we sell bonds for a referendum, we put the money in this fund until they're expensed as part of a referendum build. We had our last little bit of money that we paid for last year, which I realized I just didn't put in yet. But we'll make sure we have that in there. We spent the last $27,000 on the piece for the pool. So that fund will be zeroed out at the end of the year now. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm confusing it. Never mind. Ignore what I just said. This is Fund 46, which is the long-term capital improvement trust. So this is the one where we added $250,000 to it last year, that last transfer. So this will be another one where we haven't spent any money in it, but we will be looking at whether or not we want to add additional money to this based on whatever the surplus might be. This would be something we would look at before July 30th. Now everything I just said previously is applicable to Fund 49. Even I get the numbers mixed up once in a while. So this is the one that's tied to the referendum project. The last bit of the money that was left over of $28,000 was spent earlier this year. So that is now zeroed out, and that so you won't get reports on Fund 49 again until there's another referendum, which I don't think will happen anytime soon. Fund 50, food service. This one, from a budgetary standpoint, I'm working with Aramark this summer to come up with better calculations. But I have put in what I'm expecting to be some of the costs, especially when we're talking about capital equipment. We are looking at purchasing a van. We're looking at purchasing some additional or a walk-in cooler, some other things, in addition to some other equipment. So we will have expenditures in that account to help bring our fund balance down, but we're also looking at what the revenue will look like. As a reminder, again, we are going back to paid lunches and breakfasts come fall. So there will be there'll be less revenue coming in on a monthly basis because the reimbursement rates for free lunches will be less than what it has been during the pandemic because that funding has ended. And then just a reminder for our families, those meal prices will not change this year. So breakfast is $1.50 at the elementary school, $2 at the middle high school, and lunch is $2.50 at the elementary and $3 at the middle high school. Fund 72, a private benefit trust. We had a little bit of money in here last year and we ended up moving it into Fund 21. So we don't actually use this much anymore, but I have to report on it. It's one of the ones that DPI just wants to know. So it was basically zeroed out. And then finally, community service. This is the fund that we can use to support community activities. This includes our school resource officer, all of our elite Falcon partner, the after school programs historically have been here. The elementary after school program will be financed by the CLC grant. So that's the $130,000 of additional revenue you see. Middle school after school programming would be funded by the levy. So we would be discussing what the budget of that would look like. And then planning for facility usage costs and the SRO and a few other things. So we will have a conversation toward the end to kind of decide what that fund balance looks like. I had the expenses I thought this year would be higher, but we did not bring the Falcon partners back until fourth quarter. So you're actually going to see Fund 80 fund balance grow a little bit again. So we'll have a conversation to figure out what you want fund balance to be. Once we see our expenses, then we'll set the levy. So it'll be lower probably than what's in this budget right now. And that is basically how a school district spends its money in 20 minutes or so. I don't know how I did, Dr. Garrison. He'll have to let me know. So again, this is the first step in the process. We will have updates throughout the summer, and we will have additional information when we get ready for the annual meeting. The budget you'll approve in August will be presented at the annual meeting in September. Are there any other questions regarding the budget?
Board members, questions before we go to a motion to approve the preliminary budget? All right, would someone like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve the 2022-23 preliminary budget as presented.
Thank you very much, Ms. Robinson. A motion has been made. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Bacon. Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor with a raised hand and/or aye. All right, motion carries unanimously 7-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Klimick,
Thank you
for that. All right, let's go on to item H. Dr. Kelsey Brown.
Sure. Discussion and approval of strategic planning organization. So the original agreement is we would bring forth 3 different companies and or organizations to present to the board to facilitate our strategic planning process. Tonight was the last with Mr. Howick, who facilitated our process 5 years ago. It sounds like there is some additional information that the board may be seeking from Mr. Howick. Last board meeting was Kathy Cook and Michael Gallagher. And then our first meeting was Ted Nysky from CISA 6. And so I sent an email to you all regarding the process and wanted to know, are we looking for approval this evening so that we can continue to move the process along? Or what is the sentiment of the board at the current time?
Dr. Kelsey Brown, I think the sentiment, and I'm speaking for myself, but I'm pretty sure the majority of the board is thinking the same way. I think that we probably need to have further discussion in relationship to this. I think the first presentation we had was like a month and a half ago. And so I think there may be need for further conversation in relationship to which organization we would potentially be talking about going with. So I just think that might be, we might need to have more conversation in relationship to that. Other board members, please chime in.
Is there a time frame that we need to decide by?
Well, I would suggest that we decide as quickly as we possibly can, knowing that we're getting, who we want to help facilitate the process. In my conversations with the individuals who represented the companies, there, obviously other districts out there who are in the process of strategic planning. And so if there's someone or a company that we would like to, or that the board would like to lean toward more comfortably, the sooner we can share the information with the individual, the better off we would be. Understanding we run the risk of losing someone that we really want to another school district. I mean, I'm saying the obvious, right? And so our next meeting is not until the second week of July, of course, our next board meeting. So if you would like for that to be an agenda item for the special board meeting, that's perfectly fine. Understanding that the window means we may or may not, or the board may or may not be able to solidify the individual or company that you would like to see facilitate this process.
Well, if we don't decide tonight, when would we have?
Lisa, are you? I'm sorry, I hear you talking, but because you're next to me. I don't hear you through here.
Yeah, I'm having problems hearing her too.
I just hear her actually because she's next to me, so. Any other board members have any questions while we're trying to get our technical difficulties taken care of? Yes, Ms. Smith?
I can't hear her
I
either.
don't hear you either, Stacey.
Can't hear Stacey.
No, and this is my lab.
All right, try again.
But so, Dr. Brown, are you saying that if we move to the, put it on the special board meeting, we would really only have 2 people to choose from?
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's a great way to put it, Ms. Smith, yes.
Well, that's not something I would like, to just have 2 people to choose from. So
That's what I'll say. If we don't decide tonight, can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay, if we don't decide tonight, when would we have time for discussion to decide before our next meeting? That's my question.
It would be up to the board.
And that would either have to be a special board meeting where we just met in relationship to that, or we'd have to just wait until we had that board meeting to where everybody was comfortable with whatever the decision may be. Now, again, what I understand what Dr. Kelsey Brown is saying in relationship to some people may go and they may not. Again, for me, I'd rather make my decision making through diligence. And for me right now, I need to look back at everybody's proposal again and try to get a feeling of kind of what's going on. And I think that Mr. Horwath actually kind of gave me some things to think about a little bit in relationship to what exactly is it that we really, really, really want and how this process really needs to happen. So again, that's just my thoughts. That's the reason why I'm asking other board members. I mean, again, if we lose somebody, again, I would hate it if it's the person that we wanted again, but again, at any time, I mean, that can happen at any time. And so again, I don't want that to scare us into trying to make a quick decision right now, not knowing some of the other pieces of that. Yes, Ms. Macon, and then Ms. Peterson.
I'm sorry. Okay, what I'd like to see us is have some continuity. The one thing that's really nice about continuing or moving forward with Mr. Drew Howitz is the fact that he has had a relationship with a number of people in the community already. So it's not like we're creating a new wheel or forging new relationships. He's already been in the community and kind of working with people in Brown Deer community. So I just like the continuity of it all. So that's my take on it, and I'd like to move forward.
Board members. Yes, Ms. Peterson.
I think that I am, Dr. Vito, in agreement with you in that getting the opportunity to do a comparative between the three presentations that we've seen. I understand and can respect and appreciate Mr. Holwood being a part of our previous sessions. And so you may want to lean toward him and his organization. However, I still want to, because they have been so far ago, so long ago, the other two presentations, I think I would like the opportunity to be able to take a look at all three of them and have a comparative happen. And I don't know how that would go about. Do we have to schedule another meeting? Do we pull up each one of the presentations and then take a look at all that they have to offer? One of the things that Mr. Holwood talked about was not being able to talk about the cost. I do know and remember that one of the other presenters did talk about the cost. And so all of that should be taken into consideration when we're making a decision, even if there's some type of cost grid that we can determine what our total cost would be as a result of what we elect to do or not do. And so I do believe that in the importance of making the best decision, no matter how quickly we decide to do that, that we take an opportunity to look at all three of the proposals together and to be able to do a comparative and ultimately make a decision.
Other board members.
So I just wanted to ask, I don't know if I misplaced my copy, but did we get a copy of the proposal from Mr. Knightsky?
Is that the one that we have right now that has the KLM?
No,
that was, so that was Kathy Cook and Mike Gallagher who came on this second Tuesday. Correct. I sent you an email regarding what Mr. Howick asked me to share with the board tonight. There's still not a cost associated with it, Ms. Peterson, but that's exactly what he asked me to forward to the board. And then Mr. Knightsky, I would have to, I know Ms. Peterson, you asked him about his dollar amount that evening. I can't remember what it was. Just keep in mind though, according to what Mr. Howick mentioned this evening, in order for us to solidify a dollar amount from him, he would need additional information from us in terms of how we would want this process to proceed. So that's one piece of information, additional information he's requesting in order for him to be able to give us or respond to that question this evening. The other piece I was just having, I think there were 4 of us that raised our hands in terms of being part of the last strategic planning process. And I would like to encourage us to think about the process being one part, but then the end result of the plan being such that we, our goals and our processes that we put in place are 1, manageable, 2, strategic, 3, methodical, and 4, leads us into a space of being able to impact what we're trying to do here. So as Mr. Howick mentioned in his presentation, there were almost 70, 70 processes in place, if you will, leading up to those 3 pillars or the goals that were set for the strategic plan. And so that, in all honesty, was just not manageable. For a total of 70, it just wasn't. But he did say, he also said less is more, which I do appreciate coming from him. But I do want us to think about getting to that end result, and then whoever this, and again, this, I obviously know it's the board's decision, but whoever leads us to the end of this process as it relates to the development of the strategic plan, that it is manageable, and that they actually help us develop the end product in terms of the plan itself. And so that I think needs to be an essential part of how we get to the end of this. So by the time July 1 of our 2023 school year arises, we're in a good plan to be able to share, or a good place and have a good plan to be able to share with our community as well. So that's something that I would like for us to be mindful of, as I have worked when I first came on, worked with our team to look at our strategic plan, understand where some of those processes fell in our respective departments. And as Mr. Howard, mentioned, COVID, consumed us, which took us away from the plan. But it was after reviewing it as much as we possibly could, there was so much there that it just was not manageable for us to be, again, impactful. And that's just something that I would like for us to think about as we move forward. Less is more. Strategic, obviously it's a strategic plan, but being methodical and data oriented in terms of what we're doing, and then also supporting Ms. Macon in response to what are those evidence-based instructional strategies or strategies we can employ to impact whatever our new ideas are in our district.
Ms. Smith, you have a question?
You're mute. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I just have a question. So when I was first of all, did we not do a needs assessment and give each organization a synopsis of our needs? And was he saying that he doesn't understand what our needs are, so he can't give a dollar amount? This last person, is that what you all are saying?
So part of what we experienced, and Kevin was there and Todd was there and everyone, we determined determining what our needs were, in my estimation, were part of that process that we went through with Mr. Howard in terms of what we wanted to focus on.
Okay.
I think what he's asking at this time is how much of what he put forth today do we want to engage in? How many focus groups will we have? How many times would we meet? I think that's what he's trying to glean from us in order to be able to share a dollar amount. That's what I received.
Okay.
But if I'm incorrect, someone please.
Right. Let's maybe get that tied up with each of them so that we have so that they have an understanding of so that we're giving them clear, indication of what we need so that they can put their dollar amount on it, so they can determine, okay, these are their needs. He should have been able to answer that question. If he met with you all and you conveyed our needs, he should have been able to answer that question. All of them should have been able to answer the question. This is what Brown Deer needs. I've reviewed it. This is what I think they need. I think they need 14 meetings. I think they need 3 with the community, 3 with, head leadership. That should have been something that should have been wrapped into this. And then one thing that I was wondering about what he was saying about adjustments, was he admonishing our group on the fact that we didn't adjust? And is that something we plan to leave room for in this next plan? He said some school districts, as they went, they adjusted the plan. So he said he understands that we did not adjust our plan. So I wasn't clear on what he was saying with that.
No, I didn't.
Was anyone?
I don't think he was saying. I don't think he was
admonishing us for us.
Because I couldn't.
Right. What I got from him is trying to balance 2 plans, for example, a COVID plan and a strategic plan just became almost near impossible in this current year. That's what I took.
Okay, because when he said some schools that were able to adjust their plan, so that led me to believe that was something that we didn't do. But if that is something that we foresee, I would like for that to be one of our needs, that we build out a plan that leaves a little flexibility if we do have to pivot or do something in it. And it's not just, that it's a living document. Okay, those are my 2 questions. He should have been able to give us a dollar amount if we gave him an accurate needs assessment. And then
Ms. Smith, can I just help you with that needs assessment part? The needs assessment is part of bringing our community together to understand what we want our needs as a community to be. That doesn't come from me as a superintendent.
Well, no, not that. I mean, needs as far as this contract. Like it sounded like you all were saying that he couldn't give us a dollar amount because he didn't know what we wanted. I didn't mean to say needs assessment as far as what we need done, but that's what it sounded like when someone asked, how much would it be? He said, well, I'd need more information. We should have given him enough information to give us a dollar amount and to develop a plan.
But I don't know where the board wants to go. Like, how many times do we want to meet? How many focus
Well,
groups?
that's something, yeah, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
Hence the reason why I'm saying we need to talk about this. And so for us to be able to make our decision-making through diligence, period, point blank. Right now, after hearing the three, and then looking at the proposal for one had how many sessions and everything. We've got the other, and then we've got a third one that we don't have any. So in my estimation, I would say that we need to look at all three, us figure out exactly what it is that we think would be great, and then bring that back to them, to whoever we choose, and say, this is everything else that we would want to have happen within this proposal. And then the other piece is Kevin, as a board, we have, is it $10,000 to be able to do this?
We have whatever you decide to do.
Well,
I
thought we said we wanted to, I thought it was like $10,000 that we were going to look at potentially in relationship to the strategic plan, because I think before we did, was it like 6,500 or something like that?
Well, we did look it up. The last time we did this with Mr. Howick's company, it was $18,000 in 2017 or 2018.
18?
Yeah, so
Okay, oh, that's right, going backwards.
yeah. So and I thought Mr. Knightsky's was 15 or 16. I knew it was under that. When I checked the number, I knew it was less than what we had done last time. And then I know that the other group did provide the dollar amount specifically in their proposal. So, but I think Mr. Knightsky can provide a number. I just don't remember. I don't want to quote exactly what it is, but I thought it was in that range. He did when he did it verbally. He didn't have it in the presentation specifically.
So we're not going to ask them to come back. Can someone just put a plan of what we need to do next? Do we need to review the videos? Just if someone could suggest what we need to do next, because this is unclear to me.
Okay, so the one from KCMG was 8,500.
Right.
That's where I got that number from. So the 8,500 was KCMG, and that was to facilitate the 5-year plan, 6 meetings, then 9 monthly tactical planning meetings or whatever. So that's where I got that. That's where I got the number from, or whatever stuff. So yes.
And I know Mr. Knightsky did say it during we'd have to review the video. Didn't have it noted as to what that number was, but I know he did mention it during his presentation.
I believe Ms. Peterson, you had asked Ted. Do you recall what his was? I can't.
I don't recall. I did ask, but I don't recall. But it was in the documentation, because I do remember when I asked, board member Lisa pointed out to me that it was in the documentation. And I missed it when I was reading. So we may be able to go back to that documentation. And just talking about Mr. Howick one more time, when he indicates that he doesn't know because he doesn't know what we want. But I would hope that there is some type of grid out there on what an average cost would be for X number of sessions, or this is the cost per session, this is the cost for a group session, so that we can determine comparatively to what we have from the other people as to how these numbers will compare. Right now, we're going in blindly, and as much as we may like Mr. Howick and his organization, we don't want to spend 5 times as much. I'm saying that as an exaggerated point, because we don't know any type of grid on what those numbers could invariably look like if we elect for 6 meetings or 1 big meeting and 4 meetings. And so we can kind of calculate, even if it's not to the dollar, what that could potentially look like, depending on how many different meetings we elect to have. Has to be some type of cost schedule out there from his organization that will give us the general amounts for meetings, mass meetings, and otherwise, that we can try and come up with some type of total dollar amount and use that, as well as we're comparing other things. We can compare the dollar amounts for each of the 3 organizations as well.
Kevin, I wonder if there's a way we could go back to his previous facilitation of the process and see if maybe those dollar amounts could give us some idea in the old?
Wait, that
Contract
was
with him?
the 18th. I don't have the contract, but I looked up.
Oh,
what he billed that year.
16,000. I just found it. Ted Neskey's, his is $16,000.
Yeah,
For the, I was going back through, so on Tuesday, May 10th,
Okay, yeah.
his strategic plan and presentation, Mr. Neskey said it was $16,000.
Okay,
yeah, he said 16,000 and it'll take a year to go through
Yeah.
the process.
But in relation to Ms. Peterson, in terms of Drew though,
yeah.
I wonder if our old contract might say, 6 meetings occurred with the community and as a result of 6 meetings, it was X amount of dollars. I wonder if that would give us some idea. I don't know. I did not see the old contract, but
I
maybe
mean-
we can go back and review it.
Because right now we have documentation from the other two, one at 8,500 and one at 16,000. And we have nothing for comparative purposes from Mr. Howard's organization.
Right, because he was asking for the need. Mhm.
Right.
Yep,
Yeah,
and for the-
it seems like he wants to start the process before he can give us a price, and that's not a smart move
No,
on our
it's not.
part. And I mean, yeah, we can look at what happened, what it was last time, but as I infamously say all the time now, everything go up now. So that doesn't mean that that's what it would be at this point, so.
All right, Ms.
I
Macon?
agree.
I just have a consideration that the one thing that Mr. Howard does have to his advantage is that he has an idea as to what it might take in order to get us to our goals, where the other people are just kind of speculating that this is how they may be able to derive at something, but clearly they haven't encountered the relationships or put together a program in our district to know what the needs really might be for determining how much time they'll need to complete the process. So it's real easy to come up with a dollar amount and say, okay, we are suggesting that we are going to have to meet it so many times and it's going to cost $16,000, or the other group said 9,500. That's a big difference between 9,500 and 16,000. I think that Mr. Howard is being a little bit fair in saying, okay, now if he's come up and say, well, in the past we've used this many dates, I'm thinking we can do less dates or whatever it is that he can do. I think that he can really speculate a little better with how much, or pinpointing really how much it should cost. So I think that out of fairness, we should just ask him to say, for instance, given the number of meetings he had last time, what was the cost? And if he thought he could do it with less or more. That's my suggestion.
And I would completely concur with Director Macon on that. There has got to be a way for us to have him kind of look back at the last time he did this process and the length of time. The other piece to this is, well, I think I kind of know what the recommendation of the district is. I don't know what the recommendation of the district is. And so it would be nice to know what you would like as well.
I can speak to that. Ms. Ashley, briefly, again, having experienced Mr. Howard before, my challenge, he did a great job at facilitating the process, no doubt, but getting us to impact and outcomes did not come as a result of that strategic plan. So I really want us to think about developing a strategic plan that we as a district team and building leaders and teachers can operationalize and measure often and frequently along the way, so we can best understand what our impact is along the way before we get to the end of the school year. In my estimation, that is what I would call quality over quantity in terms of the dollar amount, because we're not able to, as much as we tried as a team to operationalize our current strategic plan, it is just, in all honesty, almost near impossible. It's just not manageable. And so I am leaning toward Mr. Neiske from CESA 6 as it relates to a simplified process with a plan on a page that could be more methodical in terms of the processes, so we can understand the impact that we're having, or so we can operationalize it, one. In other words, bring it to life. It's not a book, if you will, that sits on the shelf, but that we can take a look at this and better understand where we are along the way in the school year, as opposed to getting to the end and, you know, trying to figure out where we are. So thank you for the question, Ms. Ashley. That is what my recommendation would be in terms of this process, having experienced the process in our current strategic plan.
All right, so with all of this being said right now, we are in no place to make a decision tonight. So with that being said, I would say that this would be something that we'd have to have a discussion, and then I would say probably at our next board meeting, we'd be able to make a determination or make a decision based upon everybody going back, looking back at the proposals, any questions that they may have. If we could do that, and if there was any questions that you had, if you could send those out into an email to Dr. Kelsey Brown, she can forward it to whatever the organizations may be. And then that way we can get all of that information, bring all of that back to the next board meeting, any of the questions or whatever have you. Then I think that we may be able to make a determination as a board in being able to move forward. Because right now, too many unknowns right now. And well, at least for me, too many unknowns right now for me to be able to make a decision based upon what's going on right now. Any other further questions? To me, I just think that we just need to just go ahead. This needs to get tabled. And then next board meeting, we discuss it. Any questions that we have for any of the organizations that have submitted, let's send those to Monica, to me, to Dr. Kelsey Brown, and get those answered back. And then we can have this on the next agenda to be able to move forward. Mr. Klimick, you have your hand up.
I do. If I can, just for a moment, I want to, if with permission, take my business manager hat off and go back to being a former board member who was part of these conversations, and a community member, because obviously I'm invested as a community member as well, that we have a great strategic plan. And I just wanted to say that maybe if you do watch the videos and if you go back to those 3 board meetings and review what those are as you're watching those, to reiterate what Dr. Brown is saying is that I think, and I'll admit this as much as anyone as being on those boards, is that we never, while we developed great looking strategic plans, I don't feel like we ever got to the point where it was, part of the district, and it was something we lived and breathed and made it a part of everything that we did. And I think the only way for us to be successful is to have something like that happen. So I guess as you review those proposals, I think to look at where you think that impact could be, because I think we've certainly done it in the past where we've done these focus groups, we've had the plans, we have this nice document, but we never figure out exactly how to make it a part, of living and breathing in the district and making it, the focus of what we do. And that's, I think, the only way we're going to see change from one of these processes is to have that also embedded in the culture of our district. And so I would just encourage you to kind of have that in the back of your mind as you review them and then see which one or ones kind of elevate to the top based on that suggestion. Because that's, if I could do it again, that would be something that I would be more cognizant of, I think, as part of that process. So I'll go back to being a employee of the district.
All right, good job. All right. So let's do this. So we're gonna table this until next meeting in relationship to the planning organization. Is that correct? All in favor of that, of us tabling and bringing it to the next board meeting? Raise hand and/or aye.
Well, actually, you don't have to do anything, but you need a motion if you're going to table it.
Okay, all right.
Or you can just not do
Someone
it.
like to make a motion to table?
Dr. Vito, I will make a motion to table the discussion of the district administrator. No, where am I making a motion?
No.
I'd like to make a motion to, why am I not seeing it?
5H.
It's DH. I mean 5H. DH.
5H. Okay, I was in the right place. I wasn't sure. I'd like to make a motion to table the hiring of the 2023-2028 strategic planning organization for the school district of Brown Deer.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Peterson. Can I get a second?
I would second that with the understanding that the next meeting, yes, we have decisions made.
Our motion has been made, second, any further discussion? Why am I echoing so bad? Oh, Lisa, could you mute? Yeah, thanks. I was wondering, I was like, why am I echoing so bad? All right, any other discussion before we go to vote?
I just have a discussion because Lisa just put another kind of caveat on that motion, and I'm wondering if we should split those motions out.
Well, that right there, we already kind of discussed that we were gonna do that and do what needed to happen and stuff. So that caveat part, that was kind of already included into the original motion.
Okay, so the original motion is what again?
The original motion is make a motion to table the hiring of the 2023-2028 strategic planning organization for the school district of Brown Deer.
You said further discussion.
I said table.
No,
When you
then-
table something, you're gonna further.
No, I'm just saying, no, just after Lisa, before we voted, you said there's further discussion, so I put my hand up, so I'm waiting.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, no, I think that we should also go into this, I don't mind voting on it, knowing that it will just be two people due to the email that we got. So we're going to be discussing two candidates so that we don't.
What
spend
email?
time.
Wait a minute, stop. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
The email that was sent to the board saying that there's kind of and we don't want to rush into anything, but that first candidate will probably be gone.
Says who?
I thought that's what the email said.
It's
I'm sorry.
possible,
Did
but it's
someone
It's
not.
possible,
reference
but
it?
it's not in stone.
Okay, all right, y'all know what it is, but okay, I'm ready to vote.
Any other discussion before we vote? All right, all in favor with raise hand and or aye?
Wait a minute, was there a second?
Yeah, it was seconded by Lisa Walker.
Moved by Anita and second by Lisa, okay.
Yes. All right, all in favor, raise hand or aye again? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right, motion carries unanimously. We will table this and this will be an agenda item. Dr. Kelsey Brown, could you ensure that this is an agenda item on the next next agenda?
Yes, and so just seeking clarification, everyone will, all board members will go back and watch the videos from everyone who presented already. And then if you have any questions, you will send them to me in advance to then send them to the organizations to get your questions answered.
Yes, that
That's
is
how we
correct.
will facilitate the process. Okay,
Yes, that
all right,
is.
thank you.
All right. All right, let's go on to. All right, let's go on to item instructional calendar. Ms. Garrison.
It's me, Dr. Beadle. So we did have this discussion at the at the special board meeting, and I did notify our K-4 teachers that the board did approve just their requests and revisions. And then the teacher came back with one. We had talked about it before and I inadvertently missed it. And so it was, so I'll just read the executive summary to the board. So after a second discussion with our K-4 lead teacher, we'll continue with what the board approved in terms of our K-4 students beginning school on September 6th. And in this executive summary, I also included what the original calendar looked like so that you would know what the changes are. The one additional change was in regards to parent-teacher conferences. In October, parent-teacher conferences for 4K students will be half day in the evening from 4 to 8 p.m. on October 19th, and then all day on October 22nd, given the number of students in our AM and our PM program. And the majority of our parents, our K-4 parents do show up for parent-teacher conferences. And so we want to make sure we make a concerted effort to be able to accommodate them. And so on the 20th, parent-teacher conferences for K-4 students will be all day. And so there will be no school for K-4 students on that day. And so that would be the change for parent-teacher conferences in October. And then in February, I wanted to make sure the board knows parent-teacher conferences for K-4 are by invitation only from the teacher and or by invitation only and it's at the discretion of the K-4 teachers. And again, just reiterating on the last day for K-4 students. So really the change as it relates from our second Tuesday of this month in relation to the request now is just around parent-teacher conferences and extending that, having that whole day so our teachers, K-4 teachers have a chance to meet all of our parents because we do have a high attendance rate for K-4 teachers or K-4 students from parents in our elementary schools. So again, this is not a new request. This has happened historically. And again, it was just one of those pieces that had gotten past us. And so just wanted to bring that back to you for one more revision to the K-4 instructional calendar, as we have to see things a little different in K-4 because they're half day, and we also want to meet the needs of our parents who all attend, for the most part, attend our parent-teacher conferences. So that was included in the executive summary. And if there are any additional questions I can answer, please feel free to ask. If not, then we would ask for approval, or this should say, I should read approval, Dr. Vito, approval of the K-4 instructional calendar revisions.
All right, board members, questions for Dr. Kelsey Brown in relationship to this revision to the K-4 calendar before we go to a motion? All right, would someone like to make a motion for the approval of the 4K instructional calendar for 2022-2023? Oh, you know what? It's actually, you know what, Dr. Kelsey Brown, that motion is actually not on, it's not on our motion reference sheet, but we do need to approve this.
Oh, my apology for that. Yes.
We have to approve this. So would someone like to make a motion to approve the 4K instructional calendar provisions of 2022-2023 as presented?
I'll make a motion, Dr. Beadle, to approve the 4K instructional calendar revisions for the 2022-23 school year.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Walker. All right, would someone like to second that?
Dr. Vito, I'll second that.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Peterson. Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor with raised hand and/or aye? Ms. Smith? All right, motion carries 6-0.
Thank you.
All right. All right, let's go on to our board reports, our SWSA and legislative update. Ms. Walker.
I did attend the SWSA meeting with Dr. Kelsey Brown. Actually, it was very interesting. There was a lot of school superintendents there and other board members. The top thing was the outgoing executive director is Terry Phillips, and now there's a new director who was introduced as Dr. Maura Zini. And within our group of everyone, we kind of got together to discuss the top issues that all the districts are facing. And there was real commonality, I think, between everybody. And I don't know, do you want me to read the top 6?
If you want to summarize real quick. That's
okay. Well, I think the top issues everyone agreed on were the fiscal cliff that Kevin had talked about, and then workforce challenges with staff compensation and leadership development. And then a lot of things that we're experiencing, which is mental health of students and staff, the student achievement and increased needs, political landscape of public education and lack of vision, and special education reimbursement. Those were the top 6 issues that were discussed. And then we did breakout groups to discuss further. But that was the general, I think, what was conveyed at that meeting.
Oh, thank you very much, Lisa. All right, thank you for that update. All right, let's go on to our next update is for WASB. Ms. Ashley.
Oh, I'll be brief. This is just a summary of upcoming events. There's the Summer Leadership Institute that is being held July 8th through July 9th, and it's going to be in La Crosse. And the deadline to register will be tomorrow. So if you want to and are interested in the Leadership Institute as a board member, you can go to their website and pull up that information. Additionally, there is another training, a webinar that I think it will be really, really good information in terms of the roles and responsibilities of a board member. Again, you could go to the website to pull that information out. So yeah, and then there's one other thing, and it has to do with the legal and legislative obligations and updates as presented by WASB for June 2022. And it is a live webinar. It was actually aired earlier this month, but the live webinar is now sitting on the website. And so that concludes my report, Dr. Beadle.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Ashley. All right, let's go on next to our Ed Foundation report. Ms. Robinson.
So for the Ed Foundation, we had a couple of members who finished their terms this month. And that was Tim Helmer, I believe is his last name.
Almer.
Homer. And of course, I'm drawing a blank. I see her face, but I can't say her name. Oh gosh.
Barb, is it Tim Helmer, Barb?
Not Barb.
Well, hers is up. Deb Kurz is up.
Deb's is up, and the secretary.
Kathy Stressman.
No, not Kathy.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's her name, Dr. Beadle? Leslie.
There it is.
Galloway Sherrod.
Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yep, Leslie Sherrod Galloway. Yep, okay.
I'm looking at her face. I just can't say her name.
Okay, so we all did the same thing. Okay.
So
right.
their terms are up. And then we have 2 or 3 more board members whose terms will be up next year. So recruitment is very crucial right now for the Ed Foundation so that we can continue on with the work that we're doing for the district. So if you know people who are interested, who may be a good fit for the foundation, please do make that recommendation and suggest provide us whatever reference you can for them so that we can reach out and see if they would be interested in serving in that capacity.
All right. Thank you very much for that update, Ms. Robinson. And then now let's go on to our Parks and Rec, Ms. Smith.
Hi, the Parks and Rec meeting actually turned out to be June 7th when we had our emergency extra meeting. So I had to prioritize this meeting. But one of the things that when I talked to that they did do was they introduced the new Parks and Rec supervisor, Katie Harn, and they went over the comprehensive plan that they do have. The next meeting is the 7th of July, but it has been canceled. No, the 5th of July, but it's been canceled. So I haven't been to one yet, but I'm keeping in touch with the committee, but they haven't given us another date. The next meeting was scheduled for July 5th, but they canceled that one. So when we do something, I'll be able to report it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. And then we'll go on to item number 7, our planning calendar. July 1st, summer school registration begins. July 4th through the 8th, there's no summer school. July 10th, summer school resumes. The 13th, the Brown Day Athletic Booster Club meeting at the middle high school at 6:30. July 15th, summer school ends. August 5th, our summer board retreat. August 10th, the Brown Day Athletic Booster Club meeting again in the middle high school at 6:30. August 15th through the 19th, new teacher in service. 22nd to the 31st of August is professional learning days. August 23rd, open house A through L from 3 to 6 p.m. I'll say that again, August 23rd, open house, family's last name A through L from 3 to 6. And then August 24th is the Teachers Welcome Back kickoff at the Novak Family Fieldhouse from 1 to 4. August 24th, open house for M families with M through Z from 4:30 to 7:30. And then August 26th is the teacher building meeting. I think the only thing that was actually missing was our board meetings. Weren't on here, Dr. Kelsey-Brown.
Okay, we have them July. Let me look at the calendar real quick. 2nd and 4th. July 12th is the special board meeting.
All right, so July 12th, we'll have our special board meeting. And then the 26th.
Yes, sir.
And then the 26th is our regular board meeting.
Yes. And may I also add, Dr. Beadle, if I may?
Yes.
The Brown Deer Booster Club is having their annual golf outing on July 9th at, is it Idlewood, Kevin? We all go, I think it's Idlewood golf course. But what I'll do is I'll send you all the flyer. So if you can come on out and support us, support the Booster Club, that would be greatly appreciated.
All right. All right. With that being said, would someone like to make a motion for us to go into closed session?
I'd like to make a motion to enter into closed session to discuss district administrator evaluation pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85 1C.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Smith. A motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walker. Motion has been made and seconded. Ms. Ashley, are you ready for roll call vote?
I am. All right, Beadle,
Aye.
Daniels Ashley, aye. Macon. Peterson. Peterson.
Aye.
Robinson.
Aye.
Aye.
Walker. Aye. The ayes have it.
All right. Motion carries unanimous 7-0. We will now go into closed session. Thank everyone, because we will not go back into open session because we will not be voting on anything to come back out. So everybody, thank you very much for giving us your time this evening to share with the District of Brown Deer and hear all of the wonderful things that are going on in this information. Continue to have a wonderful remainder of your week. Enjoy this wonderful weather. And thank you and have a wonderful remainder of your evening. Good night.
And we'll see you on the 4th of July, hopefully.
Oh, we'll see you on the 4th of July, hopefully. All right, so I will adjourn this part at 8:17 to go into closed session.
Thank you, Dr. Beadle.
So we can just get out then, right?
Yes.
Can we just roll down?